Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. It's the chart show. Yes, it's the show that is unique for us on the United Stand where we count down the top 10 Manchester United players of the week like a chart show really. We used to have this when we were younger with Top of the Pops. We've now got Top of the Manchester United charts, and I will go through, you might remember last week's number one was Rafael Varane, but lots to get into. Before we get into that, I am live for this. I don't normally do it live, but obviously with the football being postponed this weekend, it's allowed us to do it live. Because we haven't got to do things like previews and everything else for the Crystal Palace game, because we're all doing nothing, watching Netflix instead, or we can watch cricket or rugby, but we can't watch football. Anyway, not going to get into that too much. As you know, I had a few drinks last night, if you check out my Instagram story, but whilst out last night, we did get confirmation that Manchester United's game next Thursday will take place. So if you're hungry for some Man United football, it's not a complete lockdown. It is no games this weekend, obviously with the sad passing of the Queen. We are expecting that next weekend's games may be in jeopardy, but there will be European games this week. So Champions League we're not in, but there will be Europa League on Thursday. So we will get Manchester United playing this week. Amazingly, Brighton and Crystal Palace, they don't play for another month because their game next week was postponed anyway. So they don't play in Europe. So Brighton and Palace don't have a game until after the international break. Amazing. David says it's top of the flops. Well, let's get straight into it. It's the United Stand chart show. Week 2. Last week, as I said, Varane was number 1. This week, we've got a brand new entry. It's this guy on my left. He's been waiting very patiently. His name is Anthony. He came from Ajax. He cost us 100 million euros, and he's a brand new entry at number 10. In fact, the first player that I can reveal that is not in the top 10 is Jadon Sancho. He's fallen out of the top 10. He was last week's number 8. Not in the top 10 this week. So Jadon Sancho is a big faller out of the top 10. And Anthony is a new entry in at number 10. And just while we're talking that as well, I will reveal that Cristiano Ronaldo is not in the top 10 for the second week in a row. I love Ronaldo. I know he's dividing opinion at the moment, but come on. We've done 2 chart shows this season and Ronaldo's not been in the top 10. You'd never think that. And he's fully fit. That's questionable whether he's fully fit, I suppose. But anyway, Anthony in at number 10. Look, I'm not going to say that he's broken the mould or that he's been excellent, but a goal on his debut, the first goal of the game against Arsenal last week. Remember, we're taking into account Arsenal and the game against Sociedad. Sociedad was quite a quiet game for him, to be honest with you, but I think it's been a reasonable first week for him. Obviously, he hadn't been training with Ajax, a very disrupting signing for him. So to come on, to start the game against Arsenal and get a goal, I thought was good. So straight in at number 10. Excuse me. Bless me. So yes, in at number 10, Anthony. So, number 9 is a big faller, David De Gea. Last week's number 6 drops down to number 9. Not for any particular reason, not for bad performance. I just think that there's a few climbers this week that we're going to see. And David De Gea just had a steady week. He made a couple of good saves against Arsenal. Obviously wasn't at fault for anything that happened against Sociedad. So, I think David De Gea has dropped basically because other people have had better weeks. So, down to number 9 for David De Gea. And nothing bad to report, just down to number 9. And then our biggest, it's not our biggest climber, actually. I'm trying to figure out who our biggest climber would be. Yeah, probably you, isn't it? Scott McTominay's moved up 2 spaces. He's in at number 8. He was last week's number 9. No, he's moved up 1 spot. What are you doing? Yeah, he's moved up 1 spot. So Scott McTominay's gone from number 9 to number 8. What's wrong with your voice, says Savage. This is what happens when you have a few pints of beer and you're shouting a lot and singing a lot in bars. You get a bit of a throat. So, croaky shades of John Motti, says Red Eye. It'll get better on the evening show. It'll be fine. McTominay not higher, says Benjamin. Well, no, he's gone last week's number 9 to this week's number 8. He obviously didn't play against Sociedad at all, which doesn't really massively matter. You can still climb. But he did play well against Arsenal. And, he's doing quite well for Manchester United. He's played 2 games in a row well. He played, obviously, Leicester last week. And then, obviously, against Arsenal, he was good. So he's done reasonably well, Scott McTominay. I won't deny that. But, probably for the first time in his career, he's put 2 good games back to back, considering he's played over 100 times for United. So hopefully that can continue. In at number 8, Doing quite well at the moment. And Casemiro not in the top 10 again, of course. Again, a little bit of a drop here. And again, it's a little bit like David De Gea. This week's number 7. He was last week's number 4. So he's dropped 3 places. Malacia. Not because he's had a bad week, but because others have had a better week. I think that I would describe Malacia's performance against Arsenal as, pretty good. And I think for the period of time that he played against Sociedad, he was pretty good. I still think we can get more out of him. I still think he's obviously not in any threat from anybody like Luke Shaw, if Luke Shaw were fit. He's doing very, very well. But he's dropped a few places. He's this week's number 7, and I don't think there's any issue with that with anybody when you see that who's climbing up the table. This is what we want to see in the chart show. It's not a disappointment to be dropping. It's an incentive to go higher again. And I actually think Man United players should be watching this and seeing where they are in the top 10. And if you're not in the top 10, why aren't you in the top 10? And if you're dropping a little bit, I want to go up next week, because that's what some players did from last week. So this week's number 7 is Malacia. I'm just checking who's in at number 6. And a bit of a climber this week. He was last week's number 10. He's our highest climber this week. He's from 10 to 6. His name is Marcus Rashford. Again, didn't play in the game against Sociedad, but that doesn't harm his chances here, because against Arsenal, he got an assist and 2 goals. Didn't get man of the match, funnily enough, which surprised many, but wasn't wrong. Eriksen was man of the match, as we know, but Marcus Rashford's had a very, very good week, and this is how the chart show works. Last week's number 10, this week's number 6. It's actually a shame we're not playing Crystal Palace tomorrow, because I think that, Rashford didn't play against Sociedad. There was a rumour that he might have been injured. I don't think he is. But that momentum from the Arsenal game, you want to keep that going. And I'm sure Rashford sat there this weekend going, obviously it's sad that the Queen's died, but if he'd been playing against Palace, can he keep that momentum going? And it'd be interesting to see what Ten Hag does with the team next Thursday, because we do need to win that. And I don't think we'll see mass rotation if the next week's Premier League games are cancelled. You've got to play your first team, haven't you? Can we somehow take the captain's armband from Maguire? My big toenail is more of a leader than him, says Cal. Well, surprisingly, Harry Maguire is not in the top 10. He probably wouldn't be in the top 15 at the moment, but he's certainly not in the 10. Marcus Rashford then is this week's number 6, which means this week's number 5 is Diogo Dalot, who last week was number 3. So he's dropped 2 places, but again, like Malacia, we're now getting into the business end of this week's chart, because the top 5 is very competitive, and Dalot actually does well to hold his place in the top 5 and basically arm off, that sounds wrong, shove off Rashford out of into 6, because Rashford very, very, very close to getting in the top 5 this week, but it is Dalot who holds his place, who I think we saw Dalot's quality in the first half against Sociedad, and I think we missed Dalot's quality when he was taken off against Sociedad. And I think he had a good game again against Arsenal. Martinelli was a tough opposition, but he did do well in that game. And I was reading something yesterday about Dalot, that across the season so far, he's really around the top in relation to stats, whether it's passing stats, tackling stats, distance covered, the lot. So there is a lot going on with Dalot's game at the moment that is really, really positive. So Dalot, number 5. He was last week's number 3. He drops 2 places, but it's very competitive in that top 5, and he's not dropping because of bad form. He's just dropping because there are players that I think deserve to be higher. Now, this one may well be controversial. He was last week's number 7. He's this week's number 4. He's risen 3 places, and his name is Bruno Fernandes, into the top 5 for the first time this season. Some would say, why is Bruno ahead of Rashford, who was at number 6? Because I think Bruno Fernandes was fantastic against Arsenal last week. And I think Bruno Fernandes is one of those players that hasn't been as bad as some players, but has been pretty bad for quite a long time. And over the last few weeks with the captaincy, 4 wins out of 4 as captain of Manchester United. A huge fundamental part of the win against Arsenal. And I think he deserves his place in the top 4. And I think this is what it's all about, isn't it? When people have been bad, we're more than happy to call them out and say that's not the standard we want. You're not fit to wear the shirt, as was sung at the away grounds last season. But when players start to perform, I think you've got to pick them up and praise them and hope that they can stay at that level, because consistency has always been the problem at Manchester United. So Bruno Fernandes, captain of the club at the moment, in the first team, certainly 4 wins out of 4. There's got to be something he's doing right there, because the team has definitely responded to his captaincy. And obviously, massive... What a pass. 1-1 against Arsenal. Arsenal have got the momentum. That pass to get Rashford in. I know Rashford does well after that. He's got to use his pace and he's got to use his finishing prowess. But the ball from Bruno Fernandes was one of the balls of the season. It was absolutely superb, and it just shows what he is capable of when we get the proper Bruno Fernandes back. And hopefully we are moving towards that. And a lot of people in the chat are saying he should be the captain of the team. I was disappointed last week against Arsenal. You're 3-1 up. You basically won the game with 10 minutes to go. Maguire comes on and takes the captaincy. Now, I know that happens at other clubs, and it's not a big issue, really. He is the club captain, but I do think in those circumstances, really, just leave the captaincy with Bruno Fernandes. That he's the captain that's won the games over the last 4 games, and I think, you know, some people were saying it really doesn't matter, it's not that deep, and of course it isn't, but I just think that the captaincy should have stayed with Bruno when there's 10 minutes left and the game's over. I don't think Maguire should be taking the captaincy in those circumstances, but Bruno agreed. Ten Hag probably said do it. So in at number 4, Bruno Fernandes this week. You can't start a fire. Without a spark. And Bruno is that spark. We used to sing it a lot on previous chart shows. You can't start a fire. You can't start a fire without a spark. This gun is for hire. Even if you're just dancing in the dark. I said I wouldn't sing on the chart show. That was a one-off. So Bruno's into the top 5. Well done to him. This week's number 3 was last week's number 1, Raphael Varane. And that just shows the quality of our top 2 this week, because Raphael Varane has done nothing wrong. He played very, very well against Arsenal. Obviously, we didn't see him against Sociedad, but he played well against Arsenal. A fundamental part of why we won that game, as he has been for the previous weeks, with that 4 winning Premier League run. Last week's number 1 is this week's number 3. Why? Because there's 2 players that are more worthy. I'd love to have seen Varane hold on to the number 1 spot, and maybe he can get it back. But I just think Varane has been ridiculously consistent, and this is what world-class players do, and this is what Varane has done. He's going through his best period in a Manchester United shirt. He's fitter than he's ever been in a Manchester United shirt, and we need to maintain that. My worry about Varane is that when he goes on international duty, he tends to come back with an injury, and I just worry about that, because we've got a very intense October, and that international break, I don't want this international break that's coming up in a couple of weeks anyway. I mean, we've got a World Cup coming up in a few weeks' time, and we're playing Nation Leagues, Poundland Cup games. I don't want to see it. And I know some people love international football, and I get it. You know, the World Cup's coming up. You've got to give those players a couple of weeks of, you know, togetherness in preparation for it. But it worries me. It worries me when Man United are on a good run, that what that international break's going to do to us. And I do worry about this guy, because he's been fantastic for us, and he is this week's number 3. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with regards to that. So this week's number 2, he was last week's number 5. He's moved up 3 places, and his name is Christian Eriksen, and I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I do. I think he's been great. What do you think, Scott? I think he's been Scooby-Doo. Absolutely brilliant. I do. I sound like Ali McCoist. No, he's been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Man of the match against Arsenal. I loved the man of the match performance against Arsenal, and I loved the man of the match acknowledgement against Arsenal that was universal. Whether it was the press, the fans, the written media, everybody acknowledged it. And the obvious choice, the lazy choice, would have been to go with Marcus Rashford. I'm not saying Marcus Rashford's lazy. I'm just saying he got 2 goals and an assist, and that's normally enough, especially being an English player. That's normally enough for the media to go, Rashford was man of the match, and I'm sure maybe some people did. But the vast majority of people singled out Christian Eriksen for last week's performance against Arsenal, and it was fundamental. It was play from deep, it was conducting, it was tempo, had a massive part to play in all 3 goals, and he was deservedly man of the match. But then I think on Thursday night against Sociedad, we saw the brilliance of Eriksen again. I know he only played the first half, but again, he was conducting the game with Casemiro. Sociedad created nothing in that first half. We conducted and protected the defence very, very well, and he ran the show. then we take him off, and you see when Fred drops into that position, just how, and it wouldn't matter if it was Fred or McTominay, to be fair, they cannot do, and Casemiro can't do it either, to be fair. None of them can do what Eriksen does. Eriksen runs the game creatively from deep. Reminds me of Carrick. Carrick used to do this. Rodri does it at Man City. You are the conductor. You are the person that surveys in front of you and runs the game and sets the tempo. The orchestrator. And he's had a fantastic week, Eriksen, and he fully deserves the plaudits. And what a signing he's been. What a signing he's been by Erik ten Hag. We mentioned this quite a lot, that he obviously was a free agent. He'll be on good wages, but he's certainly earning them. And there had to be a persuasion not to go to Brentford and not to stay at Brentford and come to Manchester United. And we spoke about it at the time during the summer transfer window, didn't we? That if we were saying to Christian Eriksen, gone are the days where we could do this. I know you're starting for Brentford, but we're Manchester United. Gary, say it. We're Manchester United, aren't we, Phil? We're Manchester United. I've been up since 4 o'clock. We're Manchester United. I've said that I'm going to copyright it. Instead of getting Gary Neville to say we're Manchester United, come and sign for Manchester United, those days are gone. You can't do that anymore. Manchester United have lost the ability to say we're Manchester United. You can't do it. You've got to make it attractive in a different way. And I think it was very obvious that Erik ten Hag said to Eriksen, you are playing for me. You are starting for me. You're not Juan Mata. You're not a very good player that's not going to start. You are a player that's going to start for me. And we've seen that. I think he's played more minutes than any player for Ten Hag so far this season. And he's absolutely fundamental. And he's doing fantastically well as well. I mean, I think the top two, and I think many of you can guess who's going to be number one as we build up to it. But the top two are both signings of Erik ten Hag. When you look at that is really important when we're 6-7 games into the season, that the top two players in our charts, and I think many people would agree wider, are new signings. Martinez and Eriksen shows you that Ten Hag is a good coach. We know that, but also that those two players are, symbolic of this team. The ability to pass out from the back, the ability to run the game from deeper. There's still a lot of holes in this team, but even if you compare it to a year ago under Solskjaer, or a year before, or even back to Mourinho, have we ever had a ball-playing centre-back like Martinez, who's left-footed and provides balance to the back four? Have we ever had a player like Eriksen since Michael Carrick, who can get his foot on the ball and conduct things? I mean, you're talking Carrick and Scholes, really. They're the last two. So it is looking good, and he has been fantastic. You should do a poll where we make the top 10, says Alvin. Alvin, you should keep your ideas to yourself. We'll do it how we do it here at the moment. Thank you very much. Although we are looking at a poll, you make a good point. But polls can be manipulated. What we're doing at the moment with the chart show, by the way, it's not just my opinion. There's about 10, 12 people involved in the United stand. So during the week, we have a bit of a conversation about whatever, and then we average it out. So it is done in a very democratic way. Anyway, this week's number one is The Butcher. Not Pat. Pat. It's not Pat Butcher. It is, I think Pat Butcher's dead, actually. Rest in peace. Pat. It's Lisandro Martinez. You might have guessed it. Smash a like on the video if you agree with Lisandro Martinez being this week's number one. Obviously, it was Varane last week. Martinez was number 2 last week. Some people felt that Martinez may well have been number 1 last week, but Varane pipped him to it. This week, this is what we want to see. Climbing that chart. Number 2 last week, number 1 this week. Look, he makes mistakes. Defenders do. Malacia got skinned a couple of times by Saka last week. It doesn't mean you have a bad game. And Jesus was a real battle. But when have we had a centre-back that wants to battle like that? When have we had a centre-back that wants to get physical and dirty? And we're talking football here, nothing else. I know you'll be watching a lot of that this weekend with no football, but we're talking about football. You're talking Yapstam, you're talking Nemanja Vidic. This is the type of centre-back we've got here. He, from minute 1, he's getting physical with the defender, trying to unsettle them. It is a physical battle. It is a mental battle. And Martinez reminds me of Vidic and Stam in the way that he gets involved with the striker. He's not going to make it easy. There's not a respect. Well, there is a respect there, but it's, we're going to battle. We're going to, the butcher. This is what, I'm going to hurt you. And that's what he does. And I'm sure there will be some penalties. I mean, the penalty on Thursday night was a bloody disgrace, by the way. When I think about Martinez giving penalties up, I think there will be mistimed tackles. I think there will be a bit of physicality. But, he was very, very good against Arsenal. And he was a game changer. He was a game changer against Sociedad because the defence... And I know Varane didn't come on, but, Maguire and Lindelof in the first half, they didn't really have anything to do, but you never felt at ease. You never felt that they were getting hold of the game. Obviously, we shift Lindelof to right back and bring Martinez on in the second half, and he's coming out of the back four. He's passing through the lines. He's being aggressive. I don't think Maguire and Lindelof did anything wrong in the first half against Sociedad, but it's a little bit like going round the track in a Vauxhall Astra and then suddenly going round the track in a Ferrari. The Astra is fine. It's not done anything wrong. It's just not as good as the Ferrari. And I think Martinez... thankfully, has silenced a lot of these stupid critics anyway, but he is absolutely at the top of his game at the moment, and I think it's very impressive because I mentioned the name Vidic, and Vidic came to Manchester United in the January, and we didn't really start to see the best of Vidic for at least 8 months. We're seeing Martinez top of our chart, second last week, plaudits. He's only been here, 2 months? So to settle into a league like that, and especially when apparently there is a height issue and, you are the last line of defence, I think he's done remarkably well for a new signing to come into a completely new league and nail down his spot, respond from being subbed off at half-time against Brentford and go on a 4 Premier League game winning run. And the defence has been fundamental to the points that we've accrued. Obviously, we lost to Sociedad on Thursday night. I've mentioned the Arsenal performance that he played, but he did make a big difference in that second half. And, the sad thing is that the penalty was a complete farce. I don't know whether anybody in the chat can explain the rules or if UEFA have explained the rules, because I was out last night and we were talking about it and one of the lads hadn't seen it and I explained it and they went, well, that's not a penalty. Can't be a penalty when it hits another part of your body first. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know whether the rules have changed, but it was a ridiculous decision. And, part of me is happy that it happened in a meaningless Europa League tie that we will still get out of that group. If that happens to you at Anfield in an important league game or... in a Europa League final, it's a bloody joke. An absolute joke. I don't understand that. But just before that, the cross had come in, and I think it was Sorloth who was going to have a tap in. He stretches out, brilliant interception, and as it sometimes happened, it used to happen to De Gea a lot. He'd make a worldy save, it goes for a corner, and then we concede. So it was a bit unfortunate there, but I think we all know it wasn't a penalty. So Lisandro Martinez is your number one this week. Make sure you smash a like on the video for him. After the start he's had, I'm glad we missed out on Timber, says Chris Naylor. And... yeah, I mean, we've still not had any clarity. I'm presuming that the UEFA rules on handball justifies the decision, but it needs to be changed, definitely. And I think there's a great point there. Jurrien Timber was the player that Erik ten Hag wanted. That was his number one choice. Martinez was the backup option. And it makes you wonder just how good the Timber is, because that was the player that ten Hag wanted. And, I look at it now and I completely agree that you wouldn't swap Timber for Martinez. You wouldn't. He's one of our own. His personality is fantastic. He reminds me of people like Vidic and Herrera, these foreign players that come into the club and they get it. They instantly connect with the fans and, he's a fan favourite and he's going to remain a fan favourite. I mean, he's a little bit like Marcus Rojo with talent. Marcus Rojo was a player that we loved for his ferocity, but he just wasn't very good. Martinez is an absolute beast, says Now, and he is. We absolutely love Martinez, of course we do. But when you compare him to Timber, you do think, why didn't Ten Hag just want Martinez as number one? Because Timber is right-footed as well. And one of the great things about Martinez, and there's quite a few that really give me hope that he's going to keep growing into a fantastic world-class centre-back, hopefully. The balance he gives us, when he's on the turn and the ball's on his left foot and he can just, Lindelof's going back to the keeper, Maguire's going back to the keeper because they're on the turn, they're right-footed and they're best, they can't do it with the outside of the foot, so they've got to go back to De Gea. Martinez on the turn, because he's left-footed, he can just whack it through, give it to Malacia, knock it through the lines to Eriksen. The improvement with the balance, this is why, we've not spoken it for a long time, but this is why you want a left-footed centre-back, because... it's, when you're facing forward and you're a right-footed centre-back who's playing on the left, you can pass it. The angles are not great, but you can pass it. But when you're on the turn and you're being chased and you're right-footed, the only pass you can do is back to your goalkeeper. But if you're left-footed, it provides you the balance to, on the turn, pass it forward. And Martinez has done this so well this season. So, yeah, it does surprise me a little bit that Timber was the priority over Martinez, but he was. Timber was the player that Ten Hag wanted, but right-footed, younger, not as ferocious. I think sometimes second option's better. And I think in this case, it's a prime example of, you always want to give your manager their number one targets, but in this case, I think that Martinez is way more suitable to what we need, personality as well. And obviously we've seen with Timber that he didn't want to come anyway. So Martinez, basically was desperate to come. So there's the personalities right for what we needed this summer. I think with De Jong, obviously, there's a massive difference between De Jong and Casemiro, and Ten Hag would be very disappointed that he ended up with Casemiro instead of De Jong because of what he wanted from De Jong in the team. But Martinez instead of Timber's worked out very, very well. So Martinez is this week's number one. That is the chart show concluded for this week. Absolutely loving doing it, and nice to be able to do it live with you people, you good people. I just want to say a couple of things as well before I go. We will be back at 8 o'clock tonight. The show will go on. We'll have the live show tonight. I want to do a bit of a Q&A, laid back Sunday night show tonight. Would have done it last night, but I was out, so we'll do that tonight. And of all the latest news, as there's a few things I want to talk about tonight. One about a transfer story, which is quite interesting. If you are a member, please check out the video I put up last night. So we put up a new video each week for the members as a thank you for supporting the channel. You get your badge in your chat like Matt has got and Darren. Don't forget to check out that new video that's gone up. It's a comparison between Rashford and Ronaldo over the first few games of the season. Aerial duels, passing ability, shot completion. Some really bad stats for Ronaldo, but some really interesting ones where he's actually better than Rashford. So it's well worth a look. Make sure you join the Members Club if you want to watch that. Or if you are a member, please do watch it. It is for you. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who watched my video on my channel yesterday that I put up. It's on the Mark Goldbridge channel. Ex-United player calls out Goldbridge. It's driving me Goldbridge, basically, where I'm just talking a load of stuff. But thanks, everyone, for watching that. Really appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in today. I love the chart show. I know a lot of you do. Obviously, we will see what happens. I'm hoping we get Premier League fixtures next week. We should have them this week. That's not disrespectful to the passing of the Queen. Rugby, cricket. Cricket's a very, very... horse racing's going on. The Queen loved horse racing, and horse racing's not been postponed. So football got it wrong. Football read the room wrong. They didn't read their fan base. They didn't read the nation. They got it wrong. And even grassroots football, my daughter can't play football today. So they've postponed football completely across the UK. And in my and many other opinions, they've got it wrong. There is loads of other sport ongoing. And I personally think that the celebration of the Queen's life is what this should be. And, I was saying this last night as well. I could have gone and watched my daughter play this morning if they'd postponed Premier League football. And they would have been stood on the centre circle, minute silence, creating a memory of when the Queen passed. Now they're all sat at home on their phones and stuff like that. It's just they got it wrong. Football got it wrong, but it is what it is. We will see what happens. But we've definitely got European football coming up next week, and hopefully we'll get Premier League action back next week as well. We'll see. I'll be back a little bit later on, 8 o'clock, of course. AG sees the clubs voted for it. Whether the clubs voted for it, whether the Premier League, whether it was the FA, they got it wrong. And this is the problem. This has always been the problem in football. They are not in touch with the people who actually pay their wages, the fans. They're not in touch. The FA is a terrible organisation at decisions. This is why they appoint people like Gareth Southgate. The Premier League have got it wrong. They've got it wrong. They've just got it wrong. And this is why we want independent regulators in football, so that things like the Super League and ownership can be scrutinised by people who actually care about football. But that's a different thing. Are you going to do any watch-alongs on That's Football? I don't know. I'm not somebody who's going to sit and watch the Bundesliga or Serie A, to be honest with you. I'll probably watch a film or paint a fence or something. I might go on Twitch a bit later and do a bit of Fall Guys, to be fair. I did that yesterday. Seb will probably come. No one listens to football fans. That's exactly correct, ANK. Thanks, everyone, for watching. I'll speak to you all in a little bit. Make sure you smash the like on the video and subscribe. And don't forget to check out the members video. If you are a member, you'll really enjoy that. Really interesting insight into Ronaldo's stats compared to Rashford this season. Take care, everyone. I'll speak to you later on. We're back at 8 o'clock, of course.